it's so funny how it really isn't a problem when sports athletes are wearing these MAGA hats and support Trump and make conservative talking points. But when it comes to black athletes like Colin Kaepernick, it's you need to stand up and respect the flag. When it comes to LeBron James and Kevin Durant, it's you don't know what you're talking about, shut up and dribble.
Will Davis, welcome to Beyond the Lines, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Felipe.
Absolutely. I'm excited about today. We're going to talk about a lot, the kind of state of the country right now. It's very politically charged, obviously, and there's a lot of correlations, affiliations with sports in this politically charged times. And I think your background is why I'm very excited to do this. You have a lot of insightful input to give. Now, I mentioned that, your background and everything. If you could give a quick run through of that.
Well, first off, again, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate you doing this,
Absolutely.
Especially on a topic like this. You don't often see us talk about race and sports, so I applaud you for taking this on and giving a platform to such important topics. Part of my background, I appreciate that, as you know. But part of my background, I am just graduated from Hofstra University. Double major in journalism and political science. I've had experience in both journalism and political science. I interned for 4 semesters at MSNBC with 2 different shows. The first show with Alex Witt on the weekends, which I found was an interesting perspective. And then the second show was Lawrence O'Donnell. And that was also a great opportunity. I did a program at Duke University called the Ralph Bunche Summer Institute, which helped me find like different avenues on going about higher education in my field of political science, and that was definitely beneficial. And right now, I'm looking to attend law school.
Obviously, very diverse political science, like you mentioned, journalism. So you have your foot in some different areas. Now, you're a big sports fan too. You love basketball,
Definitely.
right?
Love basketball.
And obviously, like I mentioned earlier, there's an affiliation with sports and a lot of this, the political movements going on right now, especially considering the NFL is 70% black, the NBA is 80% black. So there's a lot of player movements. You're seeing players like LeBron James have a big voice. He always had a big voice, but now it seems, they're getting more attention these days than they were before. Now it's a matter of the time, but nonetheless, it's good to see these players have a voice.
Well, that's a good point. To that, it also shows you about, and that goes to my journalism background, how the media plays in giving this voice. They've always have been outspoken. Athletes in the history, black athletes especially, you have your Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you have your Muhammad Ali, your Bill Russell, your Jim Browns.
Right.
You have those athletes always at the forefront of speaking out about race, right? And then you sort of get to this period of like the Michael Jordan, where he also says Republicans buy shoes, and he really didn't want to touch politics.
Absolutely.
And I always argue that because he had that stance, it kind of didn't help the future generation of athletes like the LeBron James, the D Wades, the Carmelo Anthony's, the Chris Pauls that are now starting to speak up. I mean, I see, I think his name is Lamar Jackson in football, right?
Yeah.
I think he also speaks out on it's Colin Kaepernick. How can I forget him?
Yeah, right.
But it kind of set a tone that athletes should not speak out on issues that are affecting their own people because he made that kind of stance. But now I'm happy to see a resurgence of athletes saying, no, we have to talk about, we have too much of a voice to be silent. We have to talk about these specific issues.
Absolutely. And I think it was a matter of the times. You had Michael Jordan make that statement, Republicans buy sneakers too or whatever. And yeah, that could have created a more difficult time for players following Michael Jordan. But I mean, I think Allen Iverson was really the start of, just authenticity, bringing it to the league. And then you had all these other players follow, and you see how active LeBron James is in the community and just creating social change in general. Chris Paul, other players like you've mentioned. But at the end of the day, the owners do have a majority say, and a lot of them are involved with the media. Like you say, the media plays a huge role in the perception of athletes and everything that goes on. Now, the reason I bring that up is the owners and them having so much play and everything, is that you sent me an article the other day, and I thought it was very interesting, and I think it's a great way to get started and everything. Now we're gonna run over a lot of stuff, NBA, NFL coming back, whether that's good, players, a lot of them are against it.
Right.
NCAA, Makur Maker, one of the top prospects in high school basketball, is choosing to go to HBCU, implications with that, and a lot of different things. But this article you sent me, straight up headline, I love it. I think it's what needs to be mentioned, and it doesn't. There's nothing subtle about it, but it says
sugar-coated.
Black lives don't matter when it comes to sports. So tell me, what do you give me some on that?
I enjoyed Dr. Jason Johnson, who wrote the article, his commentary about it, and he was specifically mentioning about the NBA and how a lot of people would attribute the NBA being like the most socially active league or the most, as he called it, like the blackest league out of all major sports.
Right.
And even the NBA has shown that black lives actually don't matter in their sport. And here's the reason why. When we have Kyrie Irving, when we have Dwight Howard explaining that right now is not the time to play basketball, which I think we can all agree on two fronts. Not all agree, but I think it's a great argument to talk about. On one front, you have the coronavirus pandemic. And then on another front, you have racism. And you see how divisive this country is. Right now, we know friends, family members who've dealt with having coronavirus, dying from it. Absolutely. And then we also see, especially for being black, where most of the league is black, in America, you don't know if you walk out if this is your last day because of racism in America, right? So this is really not the time to be playing basketball. And even though people say that sports unite us, it sometimes doesn't, because when we look at the reasoning behind playing, it really doesn't come down to, for the players, like Austin Rivers who countered it. Mm-hmm. It didn't come down to that it brings us together. It came down to one thing, and that was that if there are bigger implications of not playing, that if they don't play, the owners will rip up the CBC agreement and they'll get less revenue as a result from that. And I think that's a terrible way of showing. You can put Black Lives Matter on the back and equality on the back of your jerseys all you want, but if you're threatening to, because they're thinking about the safety of their family, because they're thinking of the safety of their health, and because they say this is definitely not the time to play basketball with all that's going on in race in America, if you're threatening to rip up the CBC agreement and use that as leverage for them to make less in revenue and for you to make more in revenue, you don't really care about Black Lives Matter. You don't care about equality. The things that at the least, evilness, you only care about your pockets, your green dollars, right? Yeah. And at most, you're saying, man, I only care that you entertain us. I could care less about Black lives actually matter in America.
Now let me play devil's advocate with you real quick, because obviously, like you said, it would be better for a lot of players. The owners do have control over this, and it does come down to the money for them. So there's absolutely no question about that this is, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's their pockets that matter to them, and that's why they want to do this season, and they don't really care about the health of the players for the most part. Well, I think we can both agree on that. But here's where I'll come in, and I'll say, wouldn't you think, like something LeBron James said, where you can put Black Lives Matter on a pedestal if you're playing, as if the NBA isn't going on, a lot of people can just not be aware of it. But there's a lot of NBA fans out there. There's a lot of sports fans out there. They're going to watch the league, and they're going to be watching these players like LeBron and many of these other players. And now that, this game is going on, basketball is going on, the playoffs are going on, they're going to be able to blast this whole movement more and kind of put more awareness into it.
And here's where I look at that and I say, it could be possible that you alert, like having Black Lives Matter. Yeah, millions of people will see that because they're watching it from home because of the coronavirus. But it does not bring light, and it doesn't bring real change to the movement, right? It gives them an awareness of its symbolism, right? It's like when we see across the country, they're putting streets, Black Lives Matter streets, painting them
Yeah.
on the ground and putting signs up. Well, if I don't believe Black Lives Matter and I walk by it, does that mean I believe that Black Lives Matter? No, you see these symbols, but just because you see them doesn't mean you actually believe them, right? So again, I know I talked to a lot of my friends who I tried to educate on the front, and a lot of them, they were white, that wanted the league back, and I said, and they were trying to use people like Ed Davis's and Austin Rivers, and even that LeBron James point to say that Kyrie and Dwight Howard were wrong, and Steven Jackson, etc. But then I challenged them. I said, how does this bring more light to it, right? And in all reality, a lot of them pretty much didn't really want to answer that question. They really just said that they wanted to watch basketball, and this is how they watch basketball.
Right.
So in all reality, they don't care about the movements, the work that activists, that people that are not known are given, right? And you see how like Kyrie Irving just produced a documentary.
Yeah.
Those are ways to enlighten, not dribbling the basketball.
Yeah, I think that's a hard question for a lot of people to answer, just because obviously deep down you want to watch. That's what you want to do. You want to watch the game, and that's so like you said, a lot of these friends that were making these points are white friends. It's hard for you
That's
to.
my friends too that also make those points that about why they should be, but I disagree, and they're kind of disappointed that some players like Kyrie are taking that stance. But again, most of the people that didn't want to grapple with that issue were my white friends.
There you go. And it makes sense because you don't understand how that affects you personally. Like, that's never affected you personally. You've never been the one has had to deal with those issues. And it's like that. You want to watch the game, but there's so much more implications with it. And I do think that it can be put on I don't know if a pedestal, but it's going to be aware. But at the end of the day, you saw what happened when the NFL came out and said that they're going to play the African American national anthem before they play the national anthem at football games. Well, make of it how you want to make of that with that case. But a whole fan base, I mean, it was trending on Twitter, boycott NFL. Because you have all this conservative fan base in the NFL, and you call them racist, don't call them racist, but they're boycotting that. But they're going to stop watching, according to what they say, because of this movement. So my point with that is with the NBA, if a lot of these people, like you said, with Black Lives Matter painted on the street, that's not going to make anybody think differently necessarily. So if the NBA is going on, and these players do put this, Black Lives Matter, and they try to put it on a pedestal, it doesn't mean these people are necessarily going to pay attention. So the bigger movement would be to end it and be more progressive in other ways, like you said about Kyrie Irving producing a documentary. Chris Paul's also producing a documentary on a specific athlete at HBCU school, talking about that process. So there are a lot of other ways that would more beneficially promote this whole movement anyways.
And I'm so glad you brought up it's the Negro National Anthem that I've known all my life, right? And Black people who really grow up in the spaces will know the Negro National Anthem word for word, right? But I'm not celebrating the NFL for doing that, right?
Yeah.
Again, we go back to symbolism. And actually, this is even more insulting because they're doing it for 1 week out of the whole season. Not even a whole season.
Oh, it's not the whole season they're doing it?
It's not even the whole season. It's just
I didn't know that.
For the first week, every game that first week. Still, that made white people mad.
Yeah.
That made some Black people mad, right? Over 1 week of singing the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice to Sing. That's where, again, it kind of makes me laugh about how America is, right? It's that...
How do you feel about that, though? About that incorporating that?
And I think when I'm it's funny that white people weren't educated that there is a black national anthem, the Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is a positive song,
Yeah.
right? It's not a negative song, and it's not rooted like the Star Spangled Banner in racism.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point you make, because I come from a Brazilian background, so forget just white period being in this country. I'm an immigrant myself. I came here when I was very young, so my parents have no idea. My parents don't even know the National Star Spangled Banner word for word, right? So obviously, African American causes in this country is something that's very foreign too. So it's something that I wasn't exposed to growing up. But as soon as I saw that, I made myself aware. I went and looked at the lyrics. The lyrics are it's like you said, it's so different from the Star Spangled Banner and the roots from the Star Spangled Banner, right, which is you could say it's very divisive in what it is in the time period it was written in and what was going on when the Star Spangled Banner was written in. Whereas this song is completely different. So I just wanted to kind of point that out and let you continue.
And the Star Spangled Banner takes out lyrics from the song that pretty much, glorifies that the white race will take over and don't let the black races, try to overtake us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not racist, right?
Yeah.
But then white people, and I saw some black people, are conditioned to think just because it's a Negro national anthem that it has to be racist, right? It has to be that they're trying to separate themselves. No, for example, myself, I've come from ancestors that were taken from the motherland and brought over here. So now I don't know where my country of origin is. I only know that my ancestors are from Georgia and Florida, and that they migrated up to New York and Connecticut. But I don't know anything else about where I'm from, right? So this is a pride, this is an identity, this is our own thing that Let Every Voice and Sing, that we're proud, that we sing proudly at our functions, because it's such an important aspect to us. It helps celebrate ourselves and us being here in America. It has nothing to do with like the Star Spangled Banner. It has nothing to take away from any other national anthem. It is our own, and I think it was kind of like a slap in the face from the NFL to then now put that out there for just 1 week too, and then really get people ridiculously. And then here's again where sports doesn't bring us together. Mm-hmm. They never, back in the day, they did not play the national anthem at sporting events. This is playing the national anthem is also a politicized statement. Mm-hmm. The military gave money, I think it was to the NFL, to start having the players come out and play the national anthem, and they stand for it. Right. So it was politicized to be that way, mm-hmm, right? To show patriotism, right, and to show that we're strong together and we're together, right? Right. So again, to say like, oh, this is getting politicized, then having a national anthem there in the first place is political. Yeah. So to do it, so I can understand what they were thinking. Okay, we can have this, but you please not one side by only having it for 1 week, and I just don't. But I'm kind of conflicted because I'm like, I don't think who's singing it. Number two, like it also is a complicated. It has a lot of tones that you have to hit, and it'll be disrespectful if they can't get it right on all the games. Right. And also,
well, that's in general. That's in general.
That's just in general, but the Lift Every Voice and Sing is a hard song to sing. Absolutely. Like most people that sing it are always off key, right? And so they have to sit out, but not sit out and like not sing, but they're whispering the song. They're not fully at full volume singing it.
Now, how about this though? So because you have, I completely agree with you, and you had this backlash from so much of conservative America when the NFL said they were going to do this. And so much so that Boycott NFL was trending on Twitter. And what you mentioned is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. The anthem wasn't always played before sporting events, and
Right.
it really wasn't. It is what you said. It was supposed to show, it's a symbolic sign of patriotism and for us to appreciate, what we're doing. And they try to tie, sports together with this kind of patriotism, and that's just another way of, obviously, there are a lot of conservative America does mask their inherent racism with patriotism. The same reason
Right.
that a lot of people say,
Right.
oh, the Confederate flag. You guys are going about the Confederate flag the wrong way. The Confederate flag isn't about slavery. It's about our heritage and what we had. And yeah, so it's really just a mask for really racism and everything in that sense. But then when you look at the NFL doing that with the national anthem, you did have a segment of the African American community that didn't like it because they think this is showing that they're not included in the national anthem itself, right? If we just play the national anthem and we say everybody, and we're working towards this, equality and everything, then we should be included in that. We should be included in the song, and it should go without knowing. So now the fact that we're playing these two anthems, it shows that that it's kind of divisive. What do you say to that?
I mean, it's like when schools play their own anthem, right? And is that divisive to America because they're playing their own like maybe alma mater song or their school song? Is it divisive when Canada also gets their national anthem at it? I say to.
And how about this? And what about? Because I heard this too. There's no Asian. We're not gonna play the Asian anthem. We're not Asian American anthem. We're not gonna play the Latino American anthem.
Again, it's like you have the NFL that it's like 70-80% black. It's like
70%.
It's like this is who runs this league, right? The owners. If it wasn't for the players there, the league would not be as entertaining. And as you see, people like to argue about the WNBA, for example. It's like that, we don't watch it because there's not flashy dunks and stuff like that. So clearly you probably wouldn't watch other sports if these talented and God-given ability players weren't on the field, right? Would you watch it if there were less talent or less ability than we have now? No. So probably not. Yeah. So it's like your whole base is based off of Black lives. So again, I don't know who made this decision. I think that to have this fight over our Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, is totally ridiculous, and it misses the point from what is fully happening in America, which is why I sometimes hate the symbolism, right? I hate when people try to do something like this and act like we progress. It shows that if they can't accept, after everything that's happened, 1 week of Lift Every Voice and Sing, if they think that now they need to boycott that, that just shows us that in America we haven't gone far, right? We haven't progressed a lot, that we've actually are still a racially divided society, and that if they can't understand why the Negro National Anthem is important, after not like don't have an initial thought, actually study where it came from, who wrote it, James Weldon Johnson, and why is it considered a Negro National Anthem? Then come back to me and say if you want to say that, then explain to me why, after reading that, why you come to that point. Don't just initially just say, oh, they have a national anthem. Then what in the world? Like, I can't watch the NFL anymore, right? Because they're divisive.
Right. And the NFL and the sports leagues in general, like, you mentioned the kind of the hypocrisy with the NBA. They'll do whatever they want when it's convenient. So obviously, the NFL never ever past before this year would ever come out and say something like Black Lives Matter. They would never do that, because they understand that the implications that could have with a large part of its fan base, which is conservative America, who are against that because they don't understand what it's truly for, for whatever reason they're doing. But now it's convenient. Now it's the money going into this, like the Washington Redskins. Now Nike says, oh, you got to change your name from the Redskins.
Amazon takes it off.
Amazon, and now all of a sudden, or FedEx, yeah. Now all of a sudden,
too, and Amazon removed it too, and now they're like, okay, we're losing money off of this. But for years you had people saying you cannot refer to American Indians, Native Americans, whatever term out, as
And you
Redskins,
know what's
right?
annoying about that? Because people argue against it. They say, why, it's not, we don't consider it a derogatory term. Well, that's the same thing as you saying, we don't consider the N-word a derogatory term, so we can say it if we
Right.
want. We don't
We
care
can
if
say
they determine that. That's up to them to determine. So if they think it's
Right.
a derogatory term, if they don't like
It,
that being represented as that, being called that, then isn't that their right to?
it's so funny because if you had a team that, let's say hypothetically you had a team that was like the Washington Crackers, and
Yeah.
you had this like white person, that they would find that offensive. If you had the Cincinnati Karens, for example, they can't, like, Karens.
Yeah.
They're like, it's a racial motivated, and it doesn't feel good to be
Yo, that's funny.
stereotyped
That's funny you
with
mentioned that, because there has been
white
some,
people
like,
have been saying it.
there has
And
been
so,
some stuff about
so
like white women
those terms,
Yeah, they're going against this whole Karen
whole
thing.
Karen
obviously.
thing. They're
Yeah.
saying that we're racist for calling
Them
them
Karens.
Karen. Even though I do, not to get too off topic about it, but I do sometimes hate that we call white people, like, there was for example, at their I forgot what state, but it was her and her husband came out with guns pointed at protesters, and we're
Yeah.
calling her Karen. No, that is a white supremacist who
Yeah.
hated to see the idea of black people coming down and all other races coming down together, marching peacefully, because this was in reaction to the mayor who had a difference of opinion about defunding the police. She decided to give out the names and addresses to all the people that sent her a letter complaining that wanted to defund the police. They decided to do what I say is more patriotic than a lot of what other people are doing. They're exercising their right to their freedom to march and protest,
Yeah.
right? And here they come with guns pointed at them. We can't call those people Karens. We got to call it what it is. We got to call it white supremacy, white supremacists.
Absolutely.
So-
That's kind of the basis of the past few months, is coming to grips with that, and it's bigger than anything. But
Right.
it's if we can recognize those around us, and that's really my position, is that the black community has been always been saying this. It's just the white community hasn't been listening. So now there's a lot of people who are listening, and then there's a lot of people who refuse to listen. Now those who
Right.
refuse to listen, it's really hard in my position for me to hear like any kind of argument they have to say like this is why we have our position, but maybe there's some amazing reason they have. I've yet to hear an amazing one, like the Confederate one we were talking about, why the Confederate flag stands. I've never heard a good argument for that, but
Right.
I think it's just
Here's
a
the
matter
other
of
thing that Trump has said the other day. He said that now they're teaching our kids to hate America, right? And if I found it so
Well,
interesting,
he's
in
the face of the
fact-
problem.
Well, I challenge you on this one too. These 2 points here. That one, that there is now a movement to teach the real history of America, not the whitewashing and the white supremacy history, the rewriting of history,
yeah.
where, like, for example, Black history is taught of that Lincoln freed well, first, George Washington's teeth was wooden,
Right.
when it was from the mouths of slaves. That Thomas Jefferson really had this he had this moral complexity, that he knew that slavery was wrong, but he did have like very good things for slaves, blah blah blah. When in all reality, he raped a underage black person that was enslaved by him, and also enslaved his children. They don't want to teach that. And then you get to the fact that they go over here and whitewash history that says Abraham Lincoln was for the slaves and that he freed them, and blacks really weren't trying to fight for freedom before that and everything. And then we get to civil rights, where MLK took a march for freedom, and they Obama was the ended racial society. Now we're past race, we're post racial because the first black president was elected. That's really the only history that's taught inside
Absolutely.
schools.
Yeah.
And but now when people start challenging these facts, you then start getting a sense of, oh my God, I don't like the America that was taught, because this is not the America that's actually
It's not what happened.
reality. It's not what happened, right? And so having you start coming to grips with the country, which some people who haven't been talking about this for years, who weren't educated, who had this miseducation, they start to have a hatred for the country. But when the people that actually knew this history and the people that become acquainted with this history, they start having a different appreciation for the country. They want the country to improve, but they just want the real facts to come out, and so we can actually fight for equality for all people. So we can actually influence people now, since you see the past histories of this country.
Right.
Why we can't just say, why can't we not see color anymore? We have to address it and then go from there.
Well, I think that's the hardest part, especially for a lot of people to accept, because you didn't grow up a lot of, like, in these white communities. You don't grow up, like you said, what they keep in from the school system, from the education system. You don't learn so much of this stuff. Like, I never learned about Malcolm X.
Right.
Growing up, I'd learn about it on my own, researching and stuff like that. I'd learn about all these people growing up. And then since we're talking about sports as well, how come they don't teach us about what we were talking about earlier, Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, there's so many different athletes, and not only athletes but musicians. I think like Tupac we should learn about Tupac in school. Like, I think we should learn about so many of these social activists who are in all different sectors, but they end up not teaching us that kind of stuff, and it's very whitewashed. So then it's hard for people to accept that, I think, especially when they're older, that, how you going to tell me what I learned is wrong? But they're going to have to.
They don't even teach the history of how a lot of these sports have become black player dominant and white player dominant. There's a reason why there's a lot of, it's getting more and more like minorities coming back into MLB, for example. But you see tennis, there's not a lot of black tennis stars.
Yeah.
You see golf, there's not a lot of golf stars. Lacrosse and hockey, you don't see a lot of black players there.
Right.
It's because after blacks were allowed to play in sports leagues, NFL, NBA, white and all across the country, they were integrating these sports leagues, and kids were starting to play with each other. White parents moved their kids into other sports. Golf,
it's amazing,
tennis,
isn't it?
Right,
basketball used to be the whitest sport in the world.
The whitest sport in the world, invented by someone from Canada, Naismith, and now it turned into, it's a black sport,
right?
Because white people could not handle the fact that blacks were now playing at basketball, playing in football, and instead they decided they opted to tell their kids they can't play that now anymore. Pick up a baseball, pick up a lacrosse stick, here a hockey stick, and that's where these dominant, why these leagues are so dominant in different races, right? And I didn't even know this until the NFL, I think, shared it, that blacks help help the NFL sports league at the beginning. I didn't even know all of that. And so that's, again, another part of the miseducation, is that we don't learn about the origins of things. We don't know the real history on why things are the way they are. So now we can't grasp. We really don't have a standpoint on, okay, why don't they want to play, or why can't we just all get along and stuff like that, right? When you're ignorant to the fact of all this history that hasn't been taught or been shoved away, and they present this new history that was not the case. Going back to your point of the Confederacy, that's the same. That's exactly why people cannot grasp why it is inappropriate to continue to have these Confederate monuments, to continue to have this to have the states celebrate them.
Yeah.
Look at, for example, when these monuments were built. They were built during the civil rights era because it was to scare black people, and it was to also increase the hatred, the unity among the white southern population. It wasn't because they had the southern heritage back in the day. And if you just go and read, and here's the other reason why I think instead of sports leagues should tell people we have to cancel the season. Do your reading on the real history of America. That would do so much for this country. Because once you read about just the own words of Confederate generals, Confederate leaders,
there's so much.
They tell you that it was about slavery.
Yeah.
One person said, "Don't make no mistake. This is not about taxes or whatever. This is about slavery."
Well, there you go. So half the problem is not being exposed to the information. The other half of the problem is not accepting that original information. So it's both of them at the same time. So you got to make yourself aware, and then you got to accept that that's exactly what these people said, and not say, "Oh, that's not what he meant." Oh, it was a different time. Like,
the different time part is always killer because people I don't understand how some white people love to argue that Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that that slaves would be free, but then the southern states wouldn't sign it. They wouldn't vote for it for the Declaration of Independence, and they needed all 13 colonies to vote for it. So they took it out. But so if he knew that, he knew that owning another person, a human being, was wrong. Was inhumane and wrong. But he continued to do it.
And not only that, but abuse them, as you mentioned. Now I want to transition over because you did mention the history and us not knowing the origins of a lot of these things, where they begin and stuff like that. Even with sports, like you mentioned, college basketball. Now it's been a history, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. The exploitation of these college athletes, especially when the majority of these big time college prospects coming out of high school going to these colleges are black. But there's a movement now where these players historically, where they would be going to Kentucky, they'd be going to Kansas, UCLA, Duke, these predominantly white universities who have big names for their basketball history and other reasons, and bring a lot of money to these schools. But now Makur Maker, the first one of the top prospects coming out of high school, is going to a HBCU. He's going to Howard University. So that, I say a movement. I wouldn't say it's a movement yet, but it could spark a movement.
It's sparking a movement,
There's other players who have talked about it. Mikey Williams is one who, out of the class of 2023, he's got like 2 million followers on Instagram, so he's a huge following already. We know how big the whole recruitment scale is on everything. And if you get a lot of these players to go to HBCUs, then all you're doing, I read a fact actually, I want to bring it up. I'm just about to find it. Of the 230 public schools required by the NCAA to release their revenue for 2018, right? HBCUs held 8 of the last 10 spots. Now the point is, and I think Howard has the biggest revenue of all HBCUs. It's one of the biggest I think it's the biggest HBCU school. They have the biggest revenue, but it's 2% of what Harvard makes, right? So it just talks about the discrepancy between the revenue of these schools and everything like that. Now a big part of that is sports, is athletics. Now HBCUs in particular, let's say you get one of these big time athletes, so Makur Maker is going to Howard. What the implication that brings is that they could get TV broadcast rights, they could get sponsors, they could increase their ticket revenues, and so much of that money that's coming to them, it's going to help them so much, where right now it's just helping these traditional, basketball schools. If this can become a movement, it could be really good.
And it's so interesting because at the time that because people always wanted this to happen, right?
Yeah, but why didn't it happen?
It didn't happen because we have, and sometimes in the black community, we have a mentality too that our history of like our schools and the history of like things that black business, for example, are non-related to colleges and universities, historically black colleges and universities, that they're inferior, right, to the white products, the white universities, right? Our dream is we tell our kids, I want you to go to Harvard or Cornell or
Right.
any other Columbia, right?
Yeah,
Princeton.
right.
But we don't tell them like, oh, I want you to go to Howard, Hampton, Morehouse, even
Right.
other Spelman,
Yep.
other historically black colleges and universities. And so we on the back burner of we put that in the back burner of things. And what I love about movements is that it requires someone to take that big step like Maker did, right? It requires one person to start that movement.
Right.
Now more people will, because if he made and it goes to sacrifices that Kyrie Irving was talking about. At what point do you make a sacrifice? He could have possibly made a sacrifice where he won't be taken as serious as a player because he went to HBCU school if other top prospects don't follow him and go to other HBCU schools. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Exactly.
so now I'm hopeful that they don't just pick Howard. Even though I love Howard University too, that they pick other HBCUs so
All
we can
across.
have that network of across of serious prospects going to these schools and bringing revenue that's much needed to these schools, but also, and it goes back not just to the HBCU. I was more for, and I said if I was a 18-year-old that had the God-given ability to play basketball, and everything,
Right.
and not brick it, I would I would have probably went to the G League now, right? Because
Yeah.
no,
No,
because it
that's
gives
a
you a
that's a that's a
salary.
choice now.
That's a choice. I would probably go to the G League because of how you see the NCAA exploiting them to a point where they knew they were exploiting them.
Yeah.
And they said they couldn't do anything about it, and it would question the integrity of them being amateur athletes or whatever the terminology they use. And now that they see the G League and the steam of people now going to the G League instead of college, now all of a sudden you can gain money through endorsements. I think, in all sense, either top black athletes and other athletes too. Now it doesn't have to be black. You could be white and be a top athlete.
Right.
I think you should choose the HBCU school or you should go pro. Right? You
Absolutely.
shouldn't pick these traditional. You should punish these traditional schools for years. Number one, found cheating. A lot of them for cheating, right, to get these athletes, and they were
And it's not just
punished
them; it's the Nikes and the Adidas who are funneling money through these
Right.
schools to get these players.
To get
So
these
it's
players.
college basketball is corrupt. Well, not just college basketball, college football too, but college basketball, especially in the sense what we're talking about, it's corrupt. And the funny thing is everybody knows about it, but it's almost as if we choose to ignore it because the product they give is so great. But I think that's where the difference. That's where the difference can really come in. And this is what Mikey Williams said, where he tweeted, he was like, going to a HBCU wouldn't be too bad or whatever. And that's what got everybody talking. He put a post on Instagram, and he was just saying, like, we have the power as players. And it's really
Right.
the truth.
The powers in the player. They used to say it's the powers in the college or the coaches,
Right.
right, and it's
And
not,
that's what
they're
they want
giving
you
them
to
scholarship.
and that's what they want you to believe. But you trying to tell me that if Zion Williamson didn't go to Duke, they would have the same appeal they had? No. And they wouldn't get the same money they do. But that's where the whole corruption is with Nike and Adidas funneling through. They're talking to the players, yo, come to Duke because they got to deal with Duke to get these players, and it just creates a whole corrupted atmosphere. But if you get some of these players, and we know basketball is easier to do than football because football, it's more of a team effort. But basketball, you can have one star that could change the season.
change the whole
Now,
landscape.
Howard won 4 games last year. So Maker, like as you said, he's really making a sacrifice here. If it doesn't cause a movement, he's making a sacrifice. But if he's that good, he can bring Howard to a lot more success than they had last
That's
year.
the other thing.
And
Even
they
if you
haven't
don't
made
get
they haven't made the NCAA tournament since 1992. So if you get this thing going and you get them to the NCAA tournament and other schools, like you said, like Grambling State, Winston-Salem, you get all these other HBCUs to start getting this top talent, then what you're doing, not only are you improving HBCUs, but you're taking the talent away from these just money-hungry schools like the Kansases and the Kentuckys that don't care about the players because the players from the first place know they're only going to stay at the college 1 year. They know they're not going to stay there. They're just going to college because you have to go to college. But now, you introduced, you have the opportunity to go to the G League, but you can go to HBCUs as well now.
And here's the thing about that also is that you like you said, I forgot. It was either top 25. I forgot what top out of the top prospects. I think there had there hasn't been one since Maker that chose a HBCU since I think they said 2007, right? And so you see 2007, one of them, right? And so you see why a lot of these HBCUs, especially in sports, are now behind. Where before that was the universities where the only universities that blacks could go to get an education. It was the only universities that blacks could go to play sports, and prosper, right? And also not be afraid to lose their life because they're going to these universities, right, where they know, like, okay, here I'm welcomed, but in another institution, even after it started integrating, they had to worry about going down the wrong street or going down, especially in the neighborhoods where some of these universities are. Like, look at, like, and here's the why I'm hopeful is that when you look at these historically black colleges, you look at the neighborhoods that they're in, right? When you look at these PWIs that are great in basketball because they're getting all these black players to attend there, a lot of these black players come from areas that don't look like where the college and universities are, right?
Yeah.
So they're funneling money. They're benefiting, not the players, the institution, from these players from different neighborhoods, and they're using that money to benefit the white neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to HBCUs, not only is it garnering money for the institution, it's garnering money for the neighborhoods in which they serve, right? And it gives more opportunity for student scholarships, academic scholarships, right? Or for financial aid, because you're bringing more money to that institution, whereas before they had to be way behind in recruitment and couldn't build a foundation, right? And now you got more people. You'll have more people watching. You'll have more people taking this college seriously. So I think this is a great movement in a sense. It kind of hurts because I'm kind of conflicted in the sense that, yes, I want more HBCUs, but I can't stand the NCAA. I think the NCAA is predatory, right? And they use their status, and the NBA is complicit in this before for many years. The fact that they stopped doing high school students and made it a requirement that you go for a year because owners were so hyped up about this high school player and they didn't turn out to be who they said they were. That's part of the risk of drafting them. What does 1 year? Look at what's his name from 2013, Anthony Bennett, for example.
Yeah.
What 1 year didn't do anything for him, right? So, and I bet you he would had a great 4-year career, right? I think he's at Kansas. 4 years after that, if he gets drafted number 1, what would have changed, right? He still probably would have been outside the league. So it's like it's a gamble. It's like playing the stock market, for example. You have to you're taking a risk in drafting players because you can't pick doesn't mean you should now punish it and require that people go to the NCAA. That's why I'm happy to see these alternatives coming about. Right. Where especially the G League, because the G League, now people are like, well, I think education is important, so they should go for the education. Yeah, the G League will give you a scholarship to an institution, so not only are you getting $100,000, but you're also getting a college scholarship if you choose to take it and study it, which I hope every single one of them takes that opportunity. And runs with it, because I think education is important, but the 1 year Kyrie Irving 1 year done at Duke after playing 12 games is not giving you an education either.
Yeah, no, exactly. They're not going to, and that's the thing is these college coaches and recruiters, they're recruiting these kids on the basis of they're going to go to the NBA. They know they're one and done. They don't care about their college experience. And all that matters is it's bringing more money to them. It's bringing more revenue through the TV deals. It's bringing the sponsors to them. And it's giving them money from Nikes and Adidas, who are, funneling all this money and figuring everything out. So it's running through them. So I do see it how you see it, as either way really is beneficial. You look at it from a player's perspective and being able to go straight to the G League and get sponsorship deals and stuff like that, that's going to help them out financially. Now, the only thing I have with that is that, if a player isn't ready, then I hope the G League is competent in the sense of developing these players to that level that they want to be at. Because I think that's the one argument that the NCAA had with the 1-year rule is that you a lot of players would be going straight from high school to the NBA, not being able to make it, and that's just ruining their lives. But at the end of the day, they're going to the college to go to the NBA anyways. So I look at it that way. So I think the G League it does help individually out. But if the HBCUs, if they end up to go that route, it's a greater cause, and you're not only helping. I think it's good individually as well. And even the NCAA, I think you're avoiding some of that, what we look at from the NCAA of them being just money hungry and stuff like that. Right. Because I think you overlook that because of the input, like as you mentioned, that you're putting into the black community in general, and the Howards and all these different schools we say, I think it's really going to help them out, and it's going to serve like a greater cause.
And that's a good point. And I think the biggest saver for NCAA is in basketball is if they can get this HBCU movement going, because I don't see in the near future a lot of top prospects choosing to go to a Duke, choosing to go to North Carolina, right? These big Kentucky, these big top schools after seeing, because if you declare for the drafts, I think doesn't that make you ineligible to come back and play college basketball if you don't get drafted or if you don't do well in the sport, because now you signed a professional contract.
Right.
So even if they I don't know if they changed that rule recently, but
not sure how it stands.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it stands, but I know before you could have just declared for the draft, and then if you didn't get drafted, you come back to the college. NCAA would allow that. So that again, the aspect of developing, I think your risk is greater for the NCAA than it is for going to the G League, because at least with the G League, they're giving you money to play. They're not exploiting you that in that sense, but they can't even give you you money, right? You can actually eat, right? And
especially if you have that kind of talent, like say if Zion went to the G League, then he would get compensated a lot more through sponsorships and all that kind of stuff than another athlete. So
like imagine LeBron James too, like with if he did it the right way, and he went to college for a year because the rules said it.
Right.
Like today's rules, not the three rules.
Right.
And then imagine if he did it right in the sense that he didn't do any sponsorships and nothing like that. How can he feed himself when college basketball is a full-time job in itself?
Yeah.
Then you go to school, that's a full-time job. So he can't work, right? He has no time to actually work. So how does he but they say like the players get a meal plan, but a lot of these colleges don't give them the full meal plan or eat as much as you want nutrition so you can stay in shape. They're pretty much on their own, and they have no spending money to do anything else.
They don't,
right? So now you have these other alternatives that is a golden thing for people, especially coming from a background where there wasn't a lot of money, to now you get you could not only get the $100,000, but you can sign a Nike, a Adidas, a Puma contract.
Yeah.
Then you can also, which will get you even more money. Then you can also do commercials and stuff like that. You can benefit off of your own name,
right?
Which that for years I've been saying. I actually stopped watching the NCAA because of them not allowing players to benefit off their own name. I'm like, at the bare minimum, you should be allowed to make money off of yourself that is garnering these schools millions of dollars. Like Zion Williamson, like he's making millions for Duke. He should be at least able to make that money too if he wanted to go to pop-up shops, sign jerseys, sell them and stuff like that. Why is he restricted because he's an amateur athlete?
Yeah, I never thought it made sense because like if you have anybody like that's going to like Stanford or something like that, and they have a great tech, they're like some genius, right? And Microsoft wants to use them as a sponsor for something. Like there's no restriction.
They're allowed to use that, right? That's a good point too, Felipe. And I always cringe at and hated this and would fight back so much on this point is when they would say the players have a scholarship. Why are they complaining,
Yeah.
right? It's like there's top people that get scholarships for academics. Does that mean that they can't work elsewhere? No, they're allowed to work wherever they want. They're
Right.
allowed to make bread as long as they keep a certain GPA.
Right.
They're there.
Yeah.
Why is that not the same for players?
Yeah, and to your point, man, I forgot the documentary. It was on Netflix. I watched it like a few years ago. I don't know if you ever seen it. It's really about that. It's about how the multi-billion-dollar industry that is the NCAA, and really how they take advantage of these players and stuff like that. But that is the one argument that a lot of people make, that no, they're getting rewarded with the full scholarship, with the full ride. But a lot of these players, like you said, they have nothing else other than that. There's players that have been forced. A former running back for the Texans, Arian Foster, he was dealing drugs in college. He had a full ride. He was dealing drugs in college because first of all, that's what he needed. But he needed money. He didn't have money other than that. And it's illegal. It's illegal for a coach to buy you food. Like it's illegal based on the guidelines and all this kind of stuff. So it's just, there's so many restrictions in place where people don't recognize it, and it's so much more than the educational aspect of it. And even on the educational aspect of it, these kids are being recruited to play their respective sport, whether it's football, basketball, whatever it is. They're not being recruited to go to school. So when they get to these schools and this full ride scholarship you speak of, a lot of them they don't care about sports or about school, and that's not their fault, because that's the society they're in. But these programs aren't out here trying to benefit them academically. So it's not like, okay, they're getting a full ride scholarship and we're providing them with the best education. No, they got all these tutors doing their homework for them. They put them in these, and this documentary shows that they put them in these classes that don't matter, like these like random history classes that the teachers are known to just pass you without you doing any work and stuff like that. And they get them in a bare minimum against what they want to do too, because they say, no, we need you to pass so you can play and all this, So it's so much more that goes into it. But at the end of the day, the players are exploited, and however you want to look at it. But these nuances do bring a lot of different possibilities, a lot of potential.
I think this is what goes to the point of why it's important for athletes to speak out. Because someone like LeBron James has always spoken out about the exploitation of NCAA, right? And if it helps move the goalpost. It helps get us to a place where we want to be, right?
Right.
Whereas if he was silent, then maybe with other people's voices that say no, they should be playing, they should be happy about a scholarship, they should not be getting money, could dominate the conversation, right? And it's so funny that how it really isn't a problem when sports athletes, are wearing these MAGA hats and support Trump and make conservative talking points. Like even how Lauren Ingram makes mention of Drew Brees, saying that it's his right to say that that you should stand for the flag and respect the flag and be patriotic. But when it comes to black athletes like Colin Kaepernick, it's you need to stand up and respect the flag. When it comes to LeBron James and Kevin Durant, it's you don't know what you talk about, shut up and dribble, right? It's so funny how when the narrative doesn't fit their own, it's they should not be talking about politics. They know nothing about it. They should just dribble. But when it fits their narrative, talk all you want. They're right. And this is why I love sports. It brings us together. Like that. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
No, exactly. It's whatever they can whatever narrative can build upon, the image they wanna put forward. And I think that's the prevailing theme of this whole conversation we're having, is that athletes are realizing that they have power. Like they have the college athletes, for example, or these high school athletes realize like we're the ones that bring the money, so we have the power. We go to a HBCU, and everything is gonna result from that. The TV deals and everything like that. But we're still gonna go to the league after, because our talent is our talent. Like if we're going straight from high school to the NBA, if we could do that, we would. So it's not gonna hurt our stock necessarily. And then NFL players being able to speak out, NBA players being able to speak out. And like the LeBrons and the Kyrie Irvings, for example, in this particular example, they're being able to speak out. Whereas, in the past, they like the Michael Jordans, they're only worried about what the NBA. They're worried about the NBA image. Where now it's the market,
the
league. Yeah, okay. ourselves. So I think the prevalent theme really is and I love to see it, is just that athletes are recognizing their voice and the power they have in changing so many different parts of society.
Right. I agree, and that's a good point. And I think it goes. And I wanted to make this point before, um, of how we got to this place in society,
Mm-hmm.
and it it kind of is sad in a sense that we have to rely on athletes to do this kind of work. Because
Mm-hmm.
ideally, I would want, like, let's say, example, activists who are doing the work, fighting for equality.
Well, here's the
And
difference: is that these athletes doing this, white America is watching this. The sports is a huge market in America, and that's why
right.
it's so crucial that these athletes recognize that they the power they have. Because if an activist is out here doing what they're doing, I don't have to see them. I'm not gonna see them because it's not gonna be on the news, right? Or it's not gonna be on the news I choose to see. But LeBron's on every channel, on every TV in America. So if he says something, it makes a statement.
And the fact that they need to be informed and be able to speak about these issues now, I agree with that 100%. But that's where the problem comes in my opinion.
Right.
Here's
Okay.
where the problem comes in. It comes that we now treat our athletes. I forgot who said this. We treat our athletes like we should our scholars and the people fighting, people that are on the ground fighting these things, and we treat our scholars and the people fighting equality and stuff like that like athletes, right? Where in reality, if you're not, if like they have the experience to talk about it, of course, but there's so many. I mean, I watched so many videos recently with like local activists explaining the problems that they're dealing with and shedding light on great solutions,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they never get to the forefront of that discussion. And then you see like athletes, I forgot his name, on the Eagles that
Malcolm
said
Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins, who that first off quoted Hitler. I mean, even if you knew anything about Hitler, you know that he also hated black people, right?
Yeah.
And so that quote was written by, I think, a black national, like a black person who is.
Oh, you're talking about the Deshaun Jackson one, not Malcolm
Deshaun
Jenkins.
Jackson, thank you, not Malcolm Jenkins, Deshaun Jackson, right? And so like, and that's where the problem comes in, is that we rely so much on our athletes being the scholars and being the activists, voicing them, that there will come a time where the Deshaun Jacksons come, and it takes away from now the movement that should be the progress going forward, right? And so I hate the distraction of it, right?
Yeah.
Because he made a huge mistake, and now he's learning from his mistake.
Yeah.
But they're using this now to paint a whole picture of everybody believes this, and that they should stop listening at that point, where that's not the case, right? And so that's why I'm saying we need to go back to treating our scholars and activists, etc., like they should, and our athletes like they should. Now, that's not to say that athletes shouldn't be like Muhammad Ali, shouldn't be like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, and LeBron James and them, but we shouldn't rely on them to be like. We shouldn't have to rely on them to be active in the forefront. That's where I have
point.
I hate how Jordan did it, right? Because we relied on him to be out there, his voice, right?
Yeah.
Because he has the platform.
Yeah.
He has.
That's what it comes down to.
Everybody wants to be like Mike.
Yeah.
They like Mike, want to be like Mike. You have a song after that, right?
Yeah.
And
a movie.
If you can't talk about race, right, then being like Mike is not sacrificing for the greater of society, for equality, not sacrificing for your own people. And that is where it's dangerous, where we see a lot of people, like maybe like a Dak Prescott, I could say, that will be behind saying like, oh no, I really don't. And probably some of it is the culture that he plays for the Dallas Cowboys and Jim Jones. But you have you set up this culture for athletes where even though we rely on their voices, they won't say anything because it's more profitable for them to be quiet than to sacrifice and actually fight for their people.
Yeah, I think what you said is key. I love that point. But for us to be able to recognize and look at activists who aren't athletes and appreciate what they're saying, that's really gonna come at the expense of the individual educational systems, and then that's a lot that needs to change, and coming down to the person.
Right. Well, it's like, for example, you could also use your platform to share these activists and share them.
Yeah.
Like a LeBron James, he shared the brother down in where was it? Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, where he educated this I forgot his name. I remember, I could hear his voice saying Connie. He's educated a school board member, a white school board member in a black district, on the terror of Robert E. Lee. Now just think about it. A majority black school district goes to a school named after Robert E. Lee, who supported slavery.
Yeah, and that happens way too often. That's way too common too.
Way too common. It's like it's a re-traumatization of our pain, right? But so he's up there passionately speaking about changing the name of the school, right? And for black school board members, because they've been to have solidarity like they have, and to vote people like Connie out. She left it, blah, 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 but it got so much attention on the way she reacted and how he was persistent at a school board meeting with hammering down these points. And LeBron James shared it. He was on MSNBC and he was on all these different platforms. And I'm saying sports athletes can use people like that.
Yeah.
Have your own podcast like you're doing, right? And have those people on. Right. Or share them on Twitter, share them on Facebook. So your white audience now gets to see these are the people that are doing the fight, and these are the people that are very knowledgeable in what we need to do to go forward to actually have those words that you have behind your jerseys be a reality, right? Because like I said, you could go to Black Lives Matter Plaza. Doesn't mean you believe that Black Lives Matter, or it doesn't mean that Black lives actually do matter there, right? What happened to George Floyd with the knee on his neck could happen on Black Lives Matter Plaza, right? It's like we've already seen this mess before. They named in every majority black area, they named Martin Luther King Street, Boulevard, Plaza, whatever you want to call it, and a Malcolm X Boulevard, right? And every black place, right?
Yeah,
that doesn't mean things change, right? No, just because you have their names on there, it's not a reflection. Like a lot of white people won't even accept Malcolm X, right? Because of his rhetoric and stuff, and a lot of white people won't accept the real MLK, right? Yeah. They'll talk about the "I Have a Dream" speech, but they'll never quote his that right is the voice of the unheard, right? They'll never talk about him saying that he was tired of marching, right? They never talk about him saying that he wants to be remembered as somebody that fought for poor people, that fought for the rights of the oppressed, right? Not that he won a Nobel Peace Prize or that he has all these honorary degrees or where he went to college. He wants to be remembered that he was for the people and he did all he could to fight for the people, right? So it's again, it goes back to with sports. I don't think this is the proper time to have sporting events. One, because I think it's pretty dangerous to have it, even though
it is definitely
of Dr. Fauci. I still think that you see players getting Russell Westbrook has coronavirus. I don't know about James Harden may have it. How do you quarantine and play? We still don't know the effects of what if you had it.
Yeah, that's a whole question.
Right. We don't know the effects of can you get it again? We don't know the effects. We don't know the effects of when you had it. Could you give it to someone else? Yeah. Still, could it affect somebody else's health?
Right.
We don't know about that. So again, that goes back to the article that you mentioned earlier
Hmm.
that I shared about Black Lives Don't Matter in the NBA. They're pretty much push saying go entertain, go dance for us, go dribble a
Yeah,
basketball so we can
exactly.
have some enjoyment while we sit at home protected, right?
Protected, yeah. While
It's
everybody
terrible
else is
that
at
they're
risk,
going out right
and the
while
owners are
everybody else
getting
is at
paid.
risk.
It's the same.
And
It's the same narrative. It's a different story though. It's a different
different story.
situation. Yeah.
And the other thing you have to look at too is how now they're also using things like people like if I was in the NBA, I would not be complaining about this. I would go and
Because
just like I'm
I'm
doing
getting so
what I
much
love.
money, all this,
I'm
right?
getting so much money.
Yeah.
It's again they're using the same thing, just different day. I saw even I was just, Myers Leonard, I think from Miami Heat.
Yeah.
He said my brother went on tour to Afghanistan for 9 months, and he's sick of seeing other basketball players complain about their conditions. It's tone deaf. Again, I love Jay Williams. I went to multiple of his camps. He said that it's tone deaf for basketball players to be complaining about conditions. I'm saying it's when you look at the situation, it's not just the food. It goes past the food. It goes
Yeah.
past just being in a room by themselves. You don't know the effect. They just threw them out there like they were just their lives didn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Don't matter, and we don't know the full effects, right? But let's talk about the real issue. The NBA is tone deaf for having these games played. MLB is tone deaf for trying to have these games, even if it's in the bubble, especially during the times that we're in, where we're dealing with two pandemics. That's tone deaf. That's the real reason why I think a lot of these players are complaining. It's not just about the food conditions, but
Yeah.
it's like they're coming down to risk their lives to
Right.
play basketball.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
couldn't do something better than that. Come on.
No,
It,
absolute.
well, I'm a huge basketball fan,
Yeah.
right? And I've been enjoying studying the game even more, watching historic clips, watching full games back
Right.
that I've watched before, reliving, the Ray Allen three, the Chris Bosh rebound, the Ray
Oh
Allen
yeah.
three in the corners, things
Yeah.
like that. I enjoy watching. I could have gone a couple more months without basketball, right?
Yeah.
Because
Look, it comes down to the pocketbooks. It comes down to the pocketbooks, as you
That's the
mentioned
thing.
earlier.
which again, if it comes down to the pocketbooks, guess what? Guess who? So guess who's right? Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving says that the greatest impact we could have is by sitting out because it comes down to the pocketbooks and it's sad to see that again we can't say that sports is a unifier, right? Because we always talk about how we love to see our players fade, we compete, but we never talk about for example, let me give you a couple examples. First, I would give you an example with my grandfather. My grandfather was a football coach, a wrestling coach, and a track and field coach.
Okay.
He always told me stories about when he was wrestling, and he has all these different trophies, individual trophies with his players, like winning, and team trophies, right? But when he was going to they would wrestle white schools. When they were traveling to white districts. When they got off the bus, they were called the N word. They were getting called monkeys up in Connecticut, right? They were getting called all these things when they were inside the gym. They were harassed. They were continually being called these different things, and people were like, oh, that's a long time ago. That was in the 80s, right? and
Not that long
so
ago.
it's not that long ago, right? And you're being called these different things, right? How's that a unifier, right?
Yeah.
Because we all came to one gym, but we're in such a divisive gym already. Now let me fast forward to today. You look at what happened in Utah with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, man.
Fans saying things about it.
And Boston with baseball with
Boston with baseball.
Who was it? I forgot the player, but yeah, same thing.
Even with the Patriots, for example, or the Boston Celtics. Look at Bill Russell. Bill Russell said he was called the N-word all the time and harassed when he was playing basketball, right? Where's the unifier in this, right? It's that black players have always turned the cheek and said that they love the game, they love everything else, and they never really addressed this kind of part, or white people never listened to this. But when you look at the behavior of the fans. When you look at the Malice in the Palace and you see popcorn and bottles, they're the reason. They're the reason why we don't have the like real bottles and stuff like that, beer bottles and stuff. You have to pour it in a glass. I mean, in a plastic, so it can protect the players, because they were throwing all this stuff at black players. You see the setup of these different things. You go,
history doesn't lie.
Right, history doesn't lie. And you look at LeBron James, for example. His house was vandalized with the N-word.
It was like 2 years ago, too.
2 years ago. So this unifier, sports is a unifier and it unites us. It missed me with that, because it never has been a unifier. It always has been like America is, and it's divisive. It also separates people. They can't. Why can't we just have it like, okay, the Lakers are playing the Utah Jazz, and I'll go for my sports team without mentioning all these different things? It's because we're in a society that doesn't allow that. When these players walk out, if you didn't know that they were a basketball player, like let's say they were average height and they had the same face, and you didn't know, you didn't know, like let's say LeBron James is 5'10" and he was in the NBA, you would say that LeBron James is black. You wouldn't know him as anything else, right?
Right, exactly.
So that's just America. These are the black players playing to entertain us, and we go to these games yelling and screaming back in the day, but no repercussions. Now, at least there's some type of individual repercussions, but a lot is still being issued as just fans talking and trash talk. It's not really racial, when in all reality it is.
Yeah, no. Whatever they can find a mask, whatever it may be, to be able to mask that, like racism, as you said, they will. And lots of good points, man. We've been running kind of deep on this one. Hey, is there anything else? Any tiny little thing you want to cover real quick?
I just want to bring up this article that I was looking up. It's on the history.com, and they shared about how like America has dealt with this type of times, because people say, I hate the term, the language when people say, I never seen this before. Like, this is not who we are, right?
Right.
And you look at it, and it was the 1918 flu, right? Yeah. Where people were dying like this. It was a pandemic. It was a health pandemic. And back then, they were dealing with two pandemics. They were dealing with the flu, and they were dealing with racism. World War I was ending, and black soldiers were coming back to America. And when they came back to America after they survived overseas fighting, they got
fighting for this country.
Fighting for this country, patriotism, right? Like, Drew Brees likes to mention, right, to stand for the flag of the military. Well, here you got black military coming in after they faced segregated conditions that Americans put in place across the globe. They come back to America, and they come to an angry mob of white people, and a lot of them were lynched because of the color of their skin. That's why. It wasn't. What else is it, right? No. They just fought for your country. Yeah. I can't say their country because they sacrificed fighting for it, and then they come home and get killed. Yeah. And then you see it all across during during a pandemic where we should be focused on the flu, right? We should be focused on this pandemic. You see all across this country, black neighborhoods getting massacred, and a lot of black blood being lost in this country during the pandemic. Now we fast forward 101 years later, and you see the same things happening, right? You see that while we're dealing with the coronavirus, which is affecting the black and brown community at a higher rate too. Let's not forget that. Which I agree, because there's a saying that when black and brown community, when the white community gets gets sick, gets a sore throat, the black community gets the flu, right? And so you see with coronavirus, when there's a lot of white people losing their lives off of it and getting it, you see the black and brown community getting it at a higher rate, right? And not being treated as much, so they're dying more often. Right. And so you see that we have to deal with that pandemic, and now we have to deal with the racism pandemic of police brutality, of just brutality in general. You look at Ahmaud Arbery. That was an ex-police officer, but he was just jogging. He looked at a property that was being renovated or built, and which again, it's so funny that they say, well, why was he doing that, right? They always strike this question of motive, and they never. It's like, I see white people do that all the time in my neighborhood. They'll look at a property that's being renovated, and they'll like to go see like what's happening, right? It's like every people. Sometimes I don't, because I'm not that nosy. Like, I don't really care like that. But other people are nosy, and they do look at these kind of things. Yeah. And it's normal behavior, but they question the motive behind it. But then what's so funny is they show the footage that shows white people going inside the same house, and they weren't killed, right? Obviously, the owners didn't care. It was when this brother went in, and they wanted to send a message and try to make a citizen arrest according to them, and they eventually took this brother's life, right? This is the pandemic of racism that we're dealing with in America. And it goes to my last point that no matter, I love basketball especially, I love sports in general, but this is not the time right now it's not the time to be playing when we're dealing with these two fronts.
Absolutely, man. You said it well, man. So a lot of things covered there. Yo, I have a feeling I'm gonna have to bring you back on the show.
Yo, listen. I would love that. Yo, definitely. I love the invitation back. This has been fun, man. And again, like I said, I really appreciate you putting a light on this and even discussing things that don't get discussed like that. And even us having a conversation on things that you may agree, or if you play devil's advocate to it, it's important to have these conversations and debates about this, so we can try to actually move forward together and not like try to do our own separate things, or not move forward at all, move backwards.
Exactly. No, it's like we mentioned, it's about being aware and understanding the different perspectives. And if we can do that, we can talk to each other, and then people listening, then we're gonna be able to move forward. Because if we can understand each other and we understand what's right and what's wrong, because at some point it's right or wrong, and it's not anything that's not political. Some stuff is, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, man, and we're just listening to each other and we're able to move forward, then it just brings a whole lot of good. So so definitely, man, I'm gonna have to bring you back on. Maybe talk some. You're a Grizzlies fan, right? So
I didn't even get to talk about my Grizzlies.
Ja Morant. You got something going there.
That's the rookie of the year. I've been calling since I got drafted.
I agree. Look, next show I'll bring you on. We're gonna talk about Ja Morant. That's
definitely. All right, I gotta talk about that, man.
Awesome. No, we definitely will. Again, man, thank you for coming on. I texted you. You were quick on it. You were all about it. So
I'm like, I love to come on. I had to jump on this.
Absolutely, man.
You're doing great work, man. Keep up the good work, bro.
I appreciate it, man. I'm gonna talk to you soon. All right.
Talk to you soon, bro.
Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you want to talk about something that we didn't talk about in this video, that we didn't cover, even though we covered quite a bit, then leave a comment. I'm going to want to see it, Will's going to want to see it, and we'll both respond to it. As usual, you can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, and we'll be bringing it to you next Friday, 1 p.m. once again. Thank you guys for coming.